All right, fans, it is time to talk about the college football playoff, the first ever 12-team college football playoff. I'm ready with my pseudo Penn State helmet right here. I'm wearing some colors of East Pennsboro, actually, but I'm thinking about Central York. You'll understand that a little bit later in the show. And we are now going to bring in our awesome panel to get you ready for SMU against Penn State. That is Andrew Klein. He is reporting today. We're going to interrupt his day. He is live from the vehicle. We're going to have Leah Assimakopoulos. She is the reporter covering SMU for us today. Johnny McGonigal is live, back with us now from PennLive, been covering the team for a number of years. I'm going to start with our newest guest. Leah, welcome to the show. Looking forward to hearing what you've been able to figure out this year. Give me like kind of a synopsis, a 30-second synopsis, what this ride has been like for SMU this season.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It's been quite a ride that I don't think any of us really expected. SMU makes the jump to a power conference for the first time really since its death penalty days in the 80s, and has one of the best seasons in program history. That's pretty much where we're at. Reached the ACC championship game, lost to Clemson on a last-second 56-yard field goal, but that was enough to get them into the playoff. And first time in program history, they are here. So a lot of people think, they're just happy to be here, but they've been saying this week they want to, now do something and close out this magical season.
You mentioned the death penalty. You're looking at a couple guys right there that may have been part of that from back in the day. We do love Craig James and Eric Dickerson, but quick question about them. How big of a part of the program are they still connected? I mean, are they still hailed as being awesome, or did people just kind of forget about what may have happened back then?
No, it's pretty hard to forget about what happened back then here in Dallas. They're still very much a part of it. They've been at a lot of games this year. They were both at the ACC championship game. And Eric Dickerson said that wherever SMU goes, he's following them this December and January. So still very much plugged in.
Sounds like they have overcome the disappointment of that loss. It must have been rough. But getting to the playoff, and it was no guarantee they really would, has to make them feel pretty good. That brings me to Johnny right now. The mood of Penn State after that loss in the Big Ten championship, how long did it take for them to wipe away that disappointment? Great game, but they come up on the losing end.
Yeah, it was difficult. I mean, even we talked to players after the game, obviously, out in Indianapolis at Lucas Oil Stadium, and they were hurt, right? Like they felt like they were in that game, and they were. It was a back-and-forth game between Penn State and Oregon for the Big Ten title, and that still meant and means a lot to these players, despite what some might say about conference championships in this day and age. But I think they've turned the page at this point. They recognize the opportunity that they have in front of them, an opportunity that, past Penn State teams that had lost a big game, that they didn't get. They didn't get an opportunity to play for a national championship, and this team does. So the road starts with SMU on Saturday. But when you look at the bracket, they've got a pretty favorable path, relatively speaking, as compared to some of the other, bigger teams in the first round, and even those that got a bye.
Andrew Klein, when you're looking at the bracket itself, what do you see when it comes to this matchup here?
I mean, look, the most important thing is Penn State needs to, they need to play where their feet are this week. You can't look forward to Boise State, Ashton Genty. You can't look forward to anything else, Georgia in a couple weeks, whatever it might be. Johnny, you said it. There are definitely other teams that are going to have tougher paths. Oregon, they're going to have to play Tennessee or Ohio State next week. That's not going to be easy. There are other teams that have these tough paths, but the most important thing for Penn State, you can't think about that loss from last week. You can't really think about anything else. All you need to do is go 1-0 this week against SMU. It's, you don't want to tell players to, get in that mode where they're only locked in on one little thing. There is a bigger goal at hand at the end of this whole thing. But this week, to me, it's all about SMU. You need to beat SMU. You need to want to beat SMU. Then you move on to the rest of the bracket and worrying about what your future is.
You can tell he drinks the blue Kool-Aid. The 1-0, 1-0, 1-0. That's what James Franco talks about. The head coach down in SMU, do they say that same kind of jargon?
Of course they do. Every coach in college football says go 1-0 every week. Not everyone's going to go 1-0 every week, though.
No. Hey, I looked around kind of some social media and some different expert picks out there. If there was going to be an upset, this is the one people are really looking to. If there is going to be an upset, they somehow think that it's going to be the Stags to do this against Penn State. at a whiteout in winter in Happy Valley. If it's going to happen, Johnny, how would it happen? What does Penn State have to watch out for? Give me a scenario.
Well, they can't beat themselves early. This team has been down at halftime in 6 of 13 games this year. They were able to come back on the road and win at USC, at Wisconsin, at Minnesota. But the 2 losses that they had this year, they were down at halftime to Ohio State and Oregon, and they couldn't climb out of those holes ultimately. And, when you look at it, those were the 2 biggest competitions, the 2 toughest teams that Penn State played this year. So if they get into an early hole against SMU, I mean, you look at the offensive explosiveness that they have, and Kevin Jennings, Brashard Smith, and everyone else. I mean, that's a team that if they get up on, you can keep going. And so Penn State has to avoid that early hole, that slow start that they've been plagued by this season by a fair bit, basically in half the games they've played.
What's the formula, Leah, if they're going to pull this off?
Yeah, I'm looking at 2 things. One is similar to what Johnny said. I think for SMU, it's all about strong starts. They've been really good in first quarters. They were not so good against Clemson in the ACC championship and had to fight back from a pretty big deficit. So, if they can kind of get out to that early start like they did against some teams like Louisville and Pitt earlier this season, they can really grow a big lead pretty early on. And then also I'm looking at the run game. That's been really big for SMU, and I know Penn State as well. And SMU has talked all season about winning in the trenches. A player like Brashard Smith can change a game for them. Their defensive line is also really strong, so if they can kind of win that battle on both sides of the ball, that'll be key.
And it's hard not to take them lightly. You say you're not going to, you got to go 1-0, but that you're a big favorite in this thing, so it's hard not to be a little overconfident. Andrew, give me a final thought on an upset if it were to happen.
Yeah, I think SMU would need to control time of possession. They've got a lot of great talent on their offense. I think if they get out to that quick start, like you guys said, this will be a game where if they can control things, how can you give this game away? They were able to come back in the game against Clemson. They got down early, so we know that they can battle back. But I think if SMU gets out to a quick start early, Kevin Jennings is the feature guy. He uses Brashard Smith, who's had a fantastic year this year for SMU. They're going to be able to control the line of scrimmage. And if you can control the line of scrimmage against a team like Penn State, anybody in the Big Ten, you got a lot going for you.
Well, the line of scrimmage control would be very interesting because that's tough when you're going against the Big Ten lines. That is a different animal compared to anything you see in the ACC and really almost anywhere else. Leah, tell me what you're looking forward to most, and give me some names Penn State fans might not know. When SMU has the ball on offense, what are the names that we're going to be hearing the most, and who better have a good game if you guys are going to win?
Yeah, so we brought both of them up already. Kevin Jennings is their quarterback. SMU had a bit of a complicated quarterback situation this year where they started with Preston Stone to start the year and then switched to Jennings as their starter. They're both Dallas guys, and Jennings has just been a standout all year. He's a dual threat quarterback, and he's already an early pick for a lot of Heisman voters next year as a possible finalist. And then Brashard Smith, he's a transfer from Miami and actually never played running back before this year, and he's on a bunch of All-American lists. He was All-ACC first team as a running back, so been a standout. And otherwise for SMU, it's really a by committee approach in terms of the receivers. They've got about 4 or 5 guys that kind of spread the ball around, and a pretty solid tight end in Matthew Hibner from Michigan. So definitely some weapons.
Are they the same names you're hearing, Johnny, when it comes to Penn State, who they're keying on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Brashard Smith is the one that really stands out to me. Watching SMU throughout the season, Leah mentioned it, a converted wide receiver. And you can tell that speed is on display whenever he touches the ball. Even flipping on the tape from the ACC championship game, some jet sweeps. So they like to use them in a variety of ways. And then it comes down to, I think, ultimately Kevin Jennings, because, when he gets outside the pocket, when he extends plays and puts defenses in conflict, the defensive line has to bring him down and the secondary has to hold up in coverage. And, we saw in the Big Ten championship game what Dylan Gabriel was able to do when he got outside the pocket. Penn State wasn't able to bring him down, and he made those big plays that ultimately won Oregon the game. And so that's what I'm really looking forward to seeing.
All right, let's get to the Penn State QB drama. Not drama as in who's going to start, but as in who's going to back up. I'm kind of wearing my orange and white for Central York colors here, even though it says East Penn. I'm happy for those guys as well. But Bert Bola, I covered him when he was in this area. Great guy, great family. and a great player for Penn State, really, but never got a chance to start. So you'll understand why he wants the chance to do that, especially when you hear that Drew Aller is coming back. He made that official. So, they talked to each other. They knew the situation. You're seeing their social media and what they decided to do with this. Bo would love to be a part of this playoff. The schedule just does not match up with that. It's really unfortunate. So that means that it's going to be Drew and who? So, Johnny, who are we looking at for a potential backup if it is needed?
Yeah, if needed, I think it would be Ethan Grunkemeyer, the true freshman quarterback, a highly rated prospect who came into Penn State and really lit it up from the jump. Really impressed the wide receivers and the coaching staff upon arrival, and has been pushing, just pushing Drew to be better. Throughout practice, has been running a lot of scout team, but even Sundays after games, been doing more developmental scrimmages and has looked good. We haven't seen those, but just talking to teammates and coaches, that's been the rub on Ethan Grunkemeyer. So he's a promising player and someone that obviously you wouldn't want to use a true freshman quarterback in the college football playoff, but if it comes to it, I think it would be Ethan.
Andrew, when you're looking at this QB situation, how nervous are Penn State fans about this? They liked Bo. They knew he was capable. He's shown it. And now here you are with it's Drew or, I hate to say nothing, but it's Drew or the big question mark afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly going to play a big role. I think the bigger thing that I look at when I think about Bo Pribula is you just lose that extra, that extra rushing threat on the offense. You just don't have those plays anymore in the playbook because there's not another player that you want coming in, taking those snaps and running the ball, leading that rushing attack from a different perspective of Drew Aller. I don't necessarily think this was a decision he needed to make. I've not heard much about Bo Pribula before this year and starting to cover Penn State. So I don't know what sort of opportunities he's going to have. Now is the time in the portal with everything really opening up. I think that's a whole nother conversation. The biggest thing for me, though, not really worrying about, after Aller, I think no matter what, if Aller left the game for any reason, an injury or something like that, Penn State would be in a boatload of trouble no matter who was playing quarterback. But I think the big thing for me is that you just lose that sense of trickery almost. You don't have another player you could put out there. They do have packages for Warren to take snaps, but you have a defense that's set for Warren to take that snap. It's a whole nother thing SMU doesn't have to worry about now with Bo Pribula no longer having that threat of being in the backfield. So more so than just him being their backup quarterback, he plays a key role in the Penn State offense that they now don't have.
Well, I mean, this reminds you of Will Levis. I mean, he never got a real shot to start at Penn State. He was blocked. He goes to Kentucky, has a great career. He's a starter in the NFL. You can say what his career is going like there, but I mean, he's rich. He's a starter in the NFL. Sometimes you just need that opportunity, and so that's what Bo's looking for. Leah, are they talking about this at all for SMU folks, realizing this QB drama and what's going on?
Yeah, a little bit. Brett Lashley talked about it a little bit yesterday and really just said he kind of feels for the players and this tough situation with the transfer portal. And, SMU has kind of talked all year about quarterback depth being an advantage of theirs and haven't needed to use it a whole lot. Kevin Jennings has played most of the snaps, but Preston Stone was a starter for them last year and led them to an AAC championship. And he's the first guy off the bench versus a true freshman who doesn't have any game experience. So, we'll see if it comes to that. It probably won't. You never know, but it's definitely an advantage if it does.
Lee, I know that Lashley also talked about this portal. I call it portal window hell. Is that the right way to describe it from coach's perspective too?
Oh yeah, it's a nightmare. And he pretty much had some similar comments to what James Franklin had the day before. And, I don't think any coach or player is happy with the situation in college football right now. I know it comes down to the academic calendar and things like that. But, you're forcing players to decide, do I invest in my future or do I go win a national championship game? And that's a ridiculous choice to have to make. So I think both sides are dealing with it right now, and all 12 teams in the playoff are too.
John, I don't have the full numbers in front of me. How many players for Penn State hitting the portal?
There have been a handful so far. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but there have been a few, mostly, just kind of ancillary pieces. Like there's a true freshman, T.A. Cunningham, who signed in the previous recruiting class that didn't play. There's a couple of guys like that, but Bo is really the only difference maker so far that has entered the portal for Penn State. And I just to echo Leah's comments, I agree wholeheartedly. Just being a ridiculous decision. I mean, Bo Pribula called it in his statement an impossible choice given an impossible decision, given the calendar, given, what he has to weigh, right? The immediate, want and need to help this team go possibly win a national title, or his future, his career. And this is kind of what he's dealing with, which is really, really unfortunate.
They're his friends. They're his family. Of course,
yeah,
you are so close to these people for these many years. And then to be able to have to say goodbye, I'm sure they understand. But, man, it's such an impossible choice. What happened here? Did the college football playoff just not realize that for these 12 teams, you're putting all these athletes in a difficult spot? Andrew, what research have you done on this? How did they miss the calendar so bad?
I don't know. The system is just so messed up. They should not be having this happen in the middle of the college football playoff. This is bowl season also. All these players are, sitting out of bowl games. We've seen that for a lot of years to go straight to the draft, but this whole system, there's something wrong with it. There are players who are redshirting themselves early in the season when they're not getting playing time that they want. That should not be allowed. NIL has changed the entire landscape of college football. It's changed the way you build a program, and it's right now it's really become, you got to build your team through superstars in the portal. And if you can't get those stars to come in, you're going to be in trouble. There are not a lot of teams that are not portal built. I think Clemson is one of the few ones that I can think of that doesn't utilize the portal, maybe the way they could or they should right now. So this whole system, there is something wrong with it. If it was up to me, I would say you wait till the season ends, then you open the portal up and you go from there. Obviously, academic stuff doesn't work all the same like that, but the landscape of college football is so different than it was even 5 years ago with this portal right now, and
5 months ago with the college football playoff. Hey, Leah or Johnny, are we hearing any talk about how to fix this for the future, since every single person hates this?
Rhett Lashley spoke yesterday and said, just move it to the spring. I mean, they already have a spring window. There's a 10-day window, I think, in April. So Rhett Lashley said, get rid of spring football, move it all and to be later on, have the transfer portal window, then have spring football. Just make it a timeline that makes sense pretty much. Again, the academic calendar probably gets in the way somewhat, but SMU said they think that they can make it work either way. So I'm sure it's kind of like the playoff. We're seeing some things are like the seeding, for example. We're now seeing that maybe that doesn't make a whole lot of sense as it was first planned. So I think you have a season, you see what doesn't work, and then you adjust from there.
Following up on that, something. Yeah, I was just going to say something that James Franklin mentioned was a couple things. One, he mentioned the leadership in college football, maybe the need or the want to have a commissioner, someone who can kind of wrangle these ADs and commissioners, the conference commissioners, and figure something out. Another solution could be, moving the season up or lessening the number of games that teams are playing, whether that's regular season, conference championships, just to move the overall calendar up a little bit to then comply with the transfer portal and the academic calendars, with guys having to enroll, for the spring semester to be on campus for spring camp, and they want to get in, right? Especially quarterbacks. That's really the thing with Bo, is like he needs to be at a school to start the spring semester, so he has spring ball, so he can get in with the playbook and compete for a starting job. And that's what a lot of these players are dealing with right now.
Yeah. Well, we all agree that it's terrible. And usually when everyone agrees on something, you can try to figure something out there. But very unfortunate for Bo and for all those other players having to make those tough calls. Let's get to the coaching matchup here. I'm going to let Leah go first. I know everything is roses and perfect with your coach right now. Have you guys been in touch with, or are you familiar with the disappointment and the constant gnashing of teeth that Penn State fans have over their coach, who has been very successful, but for the big games, that hasn't really worked out for them? Give me the feel from Dallas.
I'm slightly familiar. I also went to Northwestern, so I am a little more plugged into the Big Ten space. It hasn't really come up a whole lot in Dallas. Brett Lashley spoke very highly of James Franklin, and and Penn State as a whole as a program. But, I'll make my case for Lashley being the best coach on the field. And obviously they're in very different positions, very different programs, very different stages of their career. But, he's been at SMU in the head coaching role for 3 years now. He's led them to 2 conference championship games. This is his first time as a head coach. And he's been just pretty much the perfect fit for SMU. I don't know if it's a question of who's the better coach, but he really has been the perfect fit in Dallas. And yes, things are very rosy right now, and it's obviously we're looking at it through rose-colored glasses. It's been such a positive year for them, but he wants to stay in Dallas too. There's been a lot of questions of will.
That's what I was going to ask next. I mean, you can say that, but it's one of those programs that are great, but it's definitely not at the top tier and the big money. And you get success at one of those, it is the perfect launching pad. So what kind of things are you hearing when it comes to that? If you want to, pass on this one like Coach usually does, you can.
No, I'll take it, because I think, yes, it is not an SEC program. It is not a Big Ten program. Rhett Lashley played at Arkansas. He's from there. There's been a lot of rumors of if that job opens up, will he go? He signed 2 extensions in back-to-back years at SMU, and really the SMU boosters that I've talked to have said it's not going to be about the money. I mean, SMU as a university, they have the money, they have the NIL money, and that's, a reason why SMU is a desirable place for a coach. Now they're in the in a power conference. That was the thing kind of holding players back from coming, but he has the best high school football in the country in his own backyard and the money to kind of back it up. So it's not a bad place to be. The SEC is great too, but I could see him staying for those reasons.
All right, Andrew, give me a vibe check with the Penn State fans when it comes to Franklin after another loss, but a good game in the Big Ten championship.
Yeah, I think anybody calling for James Franklin's job needs to, take a deep breath. College football is so different now. Rhett Lashley is, I think, a perfect example. Somebody who definitely could leave SMU for a better program, but is there really a better opportunity? What coaches are out there right now that are going to get you to the college football playoff and win and bring in talent as consistently as James Franklin has? What coaches, coaching right now, it's not about being at the best program. It's about giving your school a chance to make the college football playoff. Once you make the dance, anything is possible from there. So for Rhett Lashley, I think he's in the perfect spot. I don't think he goes anywhere, especially in the ACC, a conference that's going to be winnable for the next few years. James Franklin, I don't think you move on from him either. I don't think there's any reason you should. The guy has proven that he can win every year for Penn State. Most years he probably not.
That sounds great. Every year, that sounds great unless they get upset by SMU in the first round.
I still don't think he loses his job, though, because
I don't think he loses his job, but we turn up the heat even further. Johnny, take it from here.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you lose to SMU at home in the first round of the playoff, when years and years and years of just barely missing out on the 4-team playoff, and everyone said coming into this season, like this format, Penn State would have been the biggest beneficiary had the 12-team format as is would have been in place in the past, right? There have been so many teams that have been ranked 6, 7, 8 that were in that great but not elite standpoint. And I mean, if you lose to SMU, I'm not going to be writing a column about James Franklin should be fired, because I don't think that should be the case. But in terms of the narrative around him and around the program about losing big games, I mean, that will only intensify and only be magnified as they go into the offseason. But in terms of the actual coach on the field, this is a guy that has a lot of big game experience, and not just, losing close to Ohio State, but, they won the Rose Bowl, they've won, won other, New Year's Six games, the Fiesta Bowl, the Cotton Bowl. So this is a coach who's been there. It's a staff that has largely been there in these big spots, and I think that will show up on Saturday.
By some measurements, this might be the biggest game in 5 or 6 years, though. It has that implication of you win and move on, and then you're still in the game. Other times it's been nice to win big bowl games, but those bowl games had nothing really on the line except for reputation. Sometimes people played in those. The incentive of some of the players wasn't always there. So this one has a lot on the line, and every time there's been a lot on the line, ever since 2016, it hasn't gone so well. So that is where, you can change the script pretty fast if you're James Franklin, get the win you're supposed to get here and move on. Which brings us to our predictions. You guys did a great job last time. Johnny was on the money. I think you said I think Andrew said it was gonna be a blowout for Oregon.
I had Oregon by a few more points than they were able to win by.
And I missed it completely because I get every prediction wrong. That's fine. All right, but we're gonna let Leah go first. Our guest from afar will be the first one to go for us here. Give us a prediction.
I have Penn State 31-27. I think SMU is going to keep it closer than the line says, but I think the lights were a little too bright for them in the ACC championship game at first, and that set them back. And they're playing in an environment that is just so unprecedented for them as a program. So it's a tough first big game to win, but I think they're going to show that they belong in the playoff.
Leah Assimakopoulos, she is on the record for a 4-point win for Penn State. We'll go Andrew Klein next.
Yeah, I think Penn State covers this week. Line 8.5 that I read, I think they win 28-17. I think they looked really good against Oregon last week. They did not get the win, but I think things turn around. Penn State's got a lot of experience from their transfers as well. Look, SMU is a team that, I got a lot of love for a lot of players. Rhett Lashley being from, Green and Orange and Coral Gables in Miami, Brashard Smith as well. But I just don't think that they're there this year. I think that Penn State defense a little too fierce. They win by 11 at home.
Okay, Johnny. Hey, by the way, Leah, real quick on you. It's going to be 30 degrees. Will this be their coldest game of the year?
Oh, yeah, by a lot.
Yeah.
It was a little chilly in Charlotte. It was in the 30s or 40s, but this will be their coldest.
All right, Johnny, go for it.
Penn State 30, SMU 23. So I have it a little bit closer than Andrew has it. I also have it a little closer than my PennLive colleagues have it as well. But I think a fourth quarter drive where Penn State holds on to the ball for as long as they can and run the ball with Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, they see it out ultimately and go into the next round and play Boise State.
All right. It brings it to me, once again, always wrong. But I say Penn State gets out to a huge lead. This environment, the whiteout, everything else can be overwhelming, right? But once SMU gets their feet underneath them, much like we saw in the last game, I think they make a run in the second half, but it comes up short. So I see something like, 30-27, 30-28, 32-29, some kind of, bite your nails if you're a Penn State fan, underneath your mittens if you're there. I think this could be close. But it really comes down to that first half. They got to stay within striking distance because we've seen the whiteout atmosphere can really be overwhelming. And 110,000 strong, first time ever in this college football playoff, knowing they can have an impact on this. The fans are going to be loving this one. Any reaction to that? Does that sound about right? Doesn't matter. You have your own predictions. That's fine. All right. So I think we're ready to go. This will not fit on me, but I appreciate you guys. Leah, enjoy. Are you going to be at the game?
Oh, yeah, I will.
All right. Bundle up. The press box is nice. Make sure that you have the ice cream. That's always a good piece of the press food up there, and enjoy all that. Johnny, we appreciate you. We look forward to your coverage on PennLive.